Welcome to Healios Spotlight. This is the third in our series. My name is Melinda Rees. I'm the Chief Clinical Officer at Healios, and I've got some great guests with me today. I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm Hurst from We Are Hummingbird.
Hello, I'm John Logue from We Are Hummingbird.
Hello, I'm Jimmy Watkins from Running Punks.
And why don't you tell us about your relationship with these guys?
It's new. It's the first time we've met in the flesh today.
Yeah.
But me and Ian connected. He invited me as a guest on his Instagram live, so we had a chat and we kind of hit it off last summer maybe.
We did, yeah.
And that's how the whole connection started.
Grew from there, didn't it?
It did. It's beautiful. And now we do a podcast together. He offers me a lot of help. He lifts me up when I'm down. I lift you up when you're down. It's almost a friendship. But
And today's the first time you've actually met in person.
Yeah.
And just, before we got up on this stage today, we've been sitting in the cafe here at Tile Yard in the heart of the music industry in London. And these three guys have told me their life stories. And they are phenomenal stories. And I'd really like you to share them with our audience.
Yeah.
So who would like to go first?
Chronologically me.
Yeah, go for it. But can I just first of all mention one of the guests that should have been with us today?
Yes, you should do that.
So we should have been joined by one of the We Are Hummingbird ambassadors, DJ Jumping Jack Frost, who sadly can't make it today due to some unforeseen family events that have occurred. So I pass on his apologies to everyone, and hopefully he'll join us next time.
Yeah, we can meet him on another occasion.
Indeed, yeah.
So you were going to go first.
And am I looking at the camera? I can't remember.
Why don't you look at us?
I'll just like.
yeah.
So yeah, I started We Are Hummingbird in 2000, and I keep doing this 15 after the loss of a really close friend of mine to suicide. And basically, he was a musician and a good friend. If there were DMs, I would have slipped into them back then because I was such a fan. And I kind of accosted him as a friend. And he played at my wedding. And unfortunately, a few days after that, a group of us were away in Ireland, and he hung himself. And unfortunately, after that, there was a bit of a spiral of everyone trying to, I guess, come to terms with what was going on. And I kind of, unbeknowing, had sort of mental health atrophy. I wasn't probably in the greatest place for some other elements. And I started to realise that there was a bit of a disconnect in terms of what's available out there and what people were finding. And what I was really, really upset with myself is that I hadn't spotted what was wrong with Matt. And that's the kind of unfortunate thing. I thought there was something wrong with him, and what I wanted to do is kind of educate myself. And as I've become more educated, I've recruited friends. So Carl, who can't be with us today, is one of the other founders, and Ian, and we built We Are Hummingbird to be a kind of a home for education and conversation. And we find ourselves here today with more and more people helping us sort of get our story out there. And thank you so much for inviting us to come and chat about it.
Well, it's a pleasure. It's great fun chatting to you guys. So We Are Hummingbird has come out of a personal story, and Healios also came out of a personal story, actually. So that there's a nice harmony there between us all. Do you want to go next?
Yeah, by all means. I think that personal story drives the passion as well, doesn't it? It's what makes you want to keep pushing forward. So yeah, as John mentioned, We Are Hummingbird was born out of a really sad situation with the passing of Matt. And I guess whilst John and I knew each other at this point, we were living separate lives, going about our own kind of careers at that time. And whilst John was experiencing everything that he was with Matt, I was having my own experiences. I don't use the word struggle. My own experiences of poor mental health. I was working in a corporate world, constantly chasing this thing that would make me feel happy or complete, and constantly chasing the pay rise. And as I was working in London, I started to really experience changes with my own mental health. I was starting to become very, very tired all the time, sleeping lots, but tired. The telltale signs of depression, as we know now. I was pushing people away. And I was experiencing a lot of isolation and times on my own. What really stands out to me now when I think about this is I never realised anything was wrong. I just thought this is what every adult goes through. This is life when you grow up. This is what happens. And so obviously as a man as well, I did nothing about it. Things snowballed pretty quickly for me over, well, I say quickly, but over a number of years they deteriorated to the point where I was fortunate enough to kind of enter my first world of education in mental health. And what struck me was everything I'd seen before was really clinical, and yeah, there's a very valid world that we need clinical, but it wasn't talking to me in my language. It was something that I couldn't relate to, and because I couldn't relate to it, I didn't take any interest in it. And when you don't take interest in it, it goes over your head. And it wasn't until I started to learn, with the help of some people, about what mental health actually is, what it means, that my whole life changed. I quit my job, I left, I retrained in a number of different areas, and that's kind of when me, John and Carl thought, let's really kick on with We Are Hummingbird, and we created it and made it illegal. we actually made it something, and from there we've just grown and grown, and I guess the ethos has always been to talk to people in a way that I wish someone spoke to me, and that's the simple thing we follow every day, isn't it? Just keep it simple, ways people can understand, and I guess make it fun, right? I mean, we get called, we have people say a lot, the horrible word I'm going to say now, the cool word, and we don't try to be cool, but it's letting people know there's other ways to talk about mental health. It doesn't have to be the way, the clinical way all the time.
And
absolutely.
I was going to say, and I guess the big link to music, apart from obviously being hugely passionate to all of us, was my kind of feeling that the biggest, broadest church of linking people is music, because there's wonderful work done in rugby or in hairdressing in different barbershops, but it's still quite niche. And I kind of thought, if we can create a community which is inclusive to music, then not only is it gives us a platform to probably speak to the most people, but it also is something that resonates. And I guess the playlists that we do every week, you know, you can have Spice Girls, or you can have Mozart, or you can have death metal from, you know,
we've had them all.
Yeah, exactly. But it's about what's personal to you, and we found that music has been almost the lubricant or the facilitator for these conversations, and yeah.
But also, so we found that with music being the link to it all, we've also got people who make music who still don't feel they have a voice. So the creators of music themselves, which help so many millions of people to connect, well, often what we found from the work we do is that they're still left in this limbo of not feeling they can talk, or not knowing who to talk to, or the fear that if they say something, they're going to be discriminated against. And that's a big part of what we do as well, around helping musicians and artists. So.
Yeah. And Jimmy,
yes.
What would you like to tell us about yourself? Your story to getting here?
I'm a big ball of energy. I spent a lot of time as a lost soul. I've been a professional athlete. I ran at the final of the World Championships as Welsh record holder over 800 metres. That was in 2006. I was kind of written about in the press as the future of British middle distance running. 2 years later, I was sleeping in the back of transit vans, touring the country with a rock band. I kind of went through ranks as an athlete really quickly, achieved success, found that it wasn't really making me happy. I think I'm a person who's always after freedom, and the freedom wasn't really there to be myself as an athlete. So I figured, let's do this travelling, but with a rock band. So I quit athletics, started a rock band, played with a rock band for maybe 7 years, realised that was bad for me in a different way to the running, and knocked it all on the head. Spent 2 years where I really didn't know what I was doing with myself. It was the first time where I felt like an adult, and I felt like I wasn't able to cope as an adult. You know, I had my first normal job in an office, and it took me to 2019, and then I just decided January the 1st, 2019, I'm going to start running again. And I started running again, and it totally turned my life around.
So the question everybody's going to want to get an answer from you on, I reckon, is why did you quit? What was that moment where you quit athletics, well, the running?
Yeah, it's quite poetic, really. I mean, I went through the ranks really quickly, and I didn't find it easy, but every time I raced, I seemed to get faster, and it was like, this is really cool. And people were like, this guy is really cool, he's different, and he's a good runner. But as soon as I became professional, and they tried to trim like the rough edges off you, and I was becoming a bit more of a racehorse than a human being. And I was out in Europe where you do like a race every weekend in a different country, and I was warming up for a race in Holland, and there was a little like woodland trail next to the track. I was just running through there, and it smelt like home. It smelt like the mountains I ran up as a kid, and I suddenly realised I've gone so far from why I wanted to run. And I just didn't want to go back on the track. I did not want to go back on the track. I went on the track, did my race, and that was it. Didn't race again.
That is really poetic.
Yeah.
And that moment where you wanted to quit music, is there a theme, or was that very different?
What did you
for
smell that day?
I smelled a lot of alcohol. I smelled probably a pint of whiskey. No, the music was... I mean, I still make music now, but it just... The lifestyle wasn't good for me. The way that you are kind of paid in free alcohol was not good for me. I definitely overdrank, and I'm one of these people, after 2 or 3 pints, I'm a different person. So it was... I was living with a lot of regret still because I'd quit running. I think as I got older and my body was changing, I was thinking I've made a mistake here. I don't feel healthy anymore. So I had all this like pent up frustration and anger, which alcohol did nothing to help. And kind of the only way to get away from that was to get away from touring in a band and things.
You're sober now. How, I want to say...
530 days, not that I'm counting.
Yeah,
Yeah, so over a year. And I don't know, it was an easy thing to do because I'd run so much and I got healthy again that my body started thinking for me. I know that sounds crazy, but it was no longer... I was seen as, it's my brain telling me to not drink, but it's also my brain telling me to drink. So you're not going to win that battle. But as soon as my body was feeling good, my body was saying, like, you don't need this. Like, look at your quads haven't felt this good since you were 20. Don't drink. And my body just took over and made all the complicated decisions for me.
And that was your turning point was the 1st of January in 2019?
Yeah, 2019.
Yeah.
I decided on my birthday, so the 30th of October, that I was going to start running again in January. But I'm not a horrible person, so I wanted the overweight, grumpy Jimmy to have one more Christmas. So I spent like a Christmas with overweight me, miserable me, and then I was like, see you later, you're going. And I started running again on January the 1st.
So it's really interesting. I've got lots of visual imagery talking to you guys. I've got these beautiful mountains, and then the other Jimmy, who's somewhere in the shadows.
Yeah.
I know when we were talking earlier, you talked about feeling like you were in a zorb when you were feeling unwell and feeling low.
Spent years in that zorb.
And then I've got the hummingbird image. Can you tell us why you chose a hummingbird?
It's got to be John.
So Matt was in a very successful rock band. Probably we sort of chatted, probably crossed paths with Jimmy, but he had a very beautiful acoustic kind of iteration of his writing, which is called The Might as well. And he would wear a hat as well to basically almost like define himself when he was on stage. So the EP that he released had a hummingbird on the front. And obviously, I guess the way I kind of described it is when we lost him, sort of, it was a smashing of the love that he brought to us. It's quite hippie, the love that he brought to us all. And I guess we all kind of connected, and this love just felt like it had to be perpetuated. So as an ode to him, I obviously called it Hummingbird. But the element of We Are Hummingbird was, I kind of wanted to make sure that we always have a lot of respect for the kind of the element of him, but it's not about him, it's about everyone, and that became the we. And even specifically, a good 20 of us all got hummingbirds. But I have 2, and the second one, this is for Matt, but this is for Hummingbird for us. And I think, it's about that community of, everyone should be able to talk to each other. It's wonderful that it came from him, but I guess if there is a light at the end of a tunnel, or however you want to put it, that's given us that kind of, I guess, as a marketeer, our iconic thing. I do dream that there'll just be a big hummingbird flag on the pyramid stage one year.
But people call us Hummingbird all the time because it's easier, and I often have to politely correct them and say the We Are is more important than the Hummingbird, because it is. Without everything, the community that we've got, the people that support us, and it is really fundamental that this isn't just, we aren't just here for when people feel things have gone wrong. We're here for when they're at their highs, when they're really enjoying life. We're a community that's together all the time. We connect, we share, we talk. If we look at the podcast that me and Jimmy do, when we sat down and we were like, what do we want to do a podcast about? I was determined not to make a mental health podcast. Because again, as soon as you go down that route of we're going to make a mental health podcast and we're going to talk about all the things that have gone wrong, well then you're putting a negative spin on mental health. So we sit and we just have such a laugh, because that's mental health. Having fun, having a giggle, that's what mental health is. And until we learn that that's what that word means, we're never going to move away from the stigma and discrimination of mental health. So We Are is so important.
It's really important.
Yeah, really important.
The conversation is really important. I remember, Jimmy, you saying earlier that when one of the things that struck you when you were running in that professional world, you were on your own, and you didn't have you had a team, but you weren't in the running team, you weren't in this team, or or in the music industry team. The way you described it was a bit like your Zorb, on your own.
It's kind of, you're in a team for the training, for the racing and everything, you're left on your own, which is kind of the most important part. Which is strange. I mean, you've got this support when you're at home. You've got people watching what you're eating for breakfast. Oh, don't have an extra jam roly pudding with your food. And you've got all those people looking after your home. But then the minute you're sent off to race, you're on your own. You wake up and you're on your own. You're like, oh no, I'm really nervous, or I don't think I can win this race. And everyone at home is waiting for that text off me to say I won a new Welsh record or something. So yeah, it's strange that you have all that support and you have these moments where when it really matters, there's nobody there.
So the we is really important to you, the community.
Yeah, and the same for Running Punks. Running Punks was actually a friend of mine's idea, Rees. So there's me and him who do Running Punks, and he believed in this running community. But because I'd spent so long as an elite athlete doing it for myself, I didn't believe that running could have a community. It didn't make sense. I was like, but you run to compete and win, so where's the community in that? And it's really blown me away. Like seeing the way the Running Punks community has formed has blown my mind, and it's changed how I feel about running. It's changed about how I feel about music. It's like I don't want to say it's a healing process, but it really is. It puts a lot of faith. Like it makes you feel optimistic. The people out there you've never met will have something in common with you.
So how does it work, Running Punks?
I guess like the main driving force of Running Punks is that I will run as fast as I can around my hometown, listening to an album I've never heard before, and I will review it and put a video online, and people send me requests, bands ask me to do their new albums, and it brings people together. It's kind of, I've had people come to me who've never run before, and all of a sudden they see in someone who looks on camera, he looks good at running, and he's talking about your favourite death metal band. And there's that connection which wouldn't happen with, if you saw like a body coach or something. You're not going to get a body coach talking about doom metal or something like that. So it gives people that confidence to, look at this guy, he likes music like I do, and they'll get in touch with you and say, oh, by the way, I want to start running, and that's where it's been amazing in that,
So the one golden thread is that you've all used music as a way into your purpose.
Yeah, it's like the ultimate thing that people will have in common with you. Do you know what I mean? It's a massive icebreaker. It's a way into an open conversation. You're gone.
I was going to say, it feels like there's obviously an element of a tribe if you like a band, but it's completely acceptable that you can have a load of different bands. So as you're a footballer, for example, if we were the Arsenal, we are Arsenal, I'd obviously pick Arsenal, then you instantly have a kind of barrier between each other. But within music, you can be into punk or you can be into dance music, and you can still have those conversations. It doesn't have a barrier, and that's what the inclusivity of music is really helpful.
I've had loads of great conversations with people who haven't known how to express things. I always think of one situation, and he couldn't talk, he couldn't open up. He was really an angry, frustrated individual. But he had headphones on, and I said, "Oh, what are you listening to?" He said, "Ocean Colour Scene." I said, "I love Ocean Colour Scene, the Riverboat song." He's like, "Yeah, me too. I went to see them here," and within seconds. And this is I guess the thing. When you look at music and when you look at the power of music, you're always going to have a foot in the door. Always, because no matter what it is, I've never heard them before, what are they like? There's just always opportunity, and I think when people talk about music that they love, they relax, they feel comfortable, they bring out all of those happy feelings that they've got, all the happy emotions that are attached to it, and straight away you're in, and that's some of the most powerful conversation starters for me.
I think as well, like music will remind you that you're a creative person, even if you don't see yourself as an artist or someone who makes something. The very fact that you're listening to music is creative, because essentially the world is a silent place. It's, sounds don't really exist. It's not like that's a sound. It's how our ears interpret it and our brain then turns into music. So I found for me that when I'm feeling alone or feeling a bit down, I'll remind myself that I've got a pair of headphones on and I've interpreted this music my own way.
Yeah.
And it reminds you that you are a creative person. There are parts of you which are not going to be adult. You're not just like a slave to reason and logic. You have this creative spark, and I find the Running Punks as being amazing, and that is just seeing how people react to the same albums that you're listening to and people's different interpretations on it. It just reminds people that you are creative.
Yeah.
You know, we've got people who don't feel creative, but they encourage to talk about music while running, and then all of a sudden they send me messages. I never really talked about music like that before. I didn't realise I had it in me. So
we have one of the kind of, I guess, campaign marketing ideas that we have with Hummingbird is to have playlists, and the idea was to get people to be interested in a famous person's song choices, to then get them onto the website through osmosis, find the directional stuff we have on there. But what we've found is the cathartic, the experience of people when they sit down and have to choose those 12 tracks, they'll come back and go, I really enjoyed it. It was a nightmare, but I really enjoyed it. And I think what you're saying is it kind of sparks that creativity, and a lot of the conversations we have about breathing or mindfulness is about slowing down the brain and getting into that space. And even like, we didn't realise when we asked to have these playlists that created, it's almost been another way for music to give people space and start to really connect with some feelings or some experiences, because those songs just time machines back to a great time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about how music kind of bookmarks your life, doesn't it? That track happened, you know, I used to listen to that when the soundtracks. Yes, much better, much better. So music soundtracks your life, and how music can provoke emotion in us, and you know, it literally changes our mood, enhances our mood, it helps us express sadness. We were talking about the music industry and how people use external sources to change their mood. Maybe they use substances. And then we sort of talked about, really interestingly, about why do we not talk about mental health and mental illness? And I think we were saying something about it's emotional, it's seen as weakness, and we were kind of...
Well, from what I've done through educating and training people, which I do a lot now. So most weeks I'll train individuals on mental health. So yesterday I was at a brilliant place, funnily enough, introduced by someone that Jimmy has written a running plan for, who works with horses at an equestrian, and she said, look, come and talk to us. So I went and spoke to 10 people at an equestrian. I work with the Royal Navy, I work with musicians and artists, and I've trained loads of great people. But one of the main things that stands through is men mix up mental health with feelings. So when men hear the word mental health, they go straight to this thing of, that's feelings, that is, mate, and I'm not involved in that. That's over there. I never had mental health. And it's this fear of understanding what the word means, which means people don't talk about it, they don't explore it, they don't understand it. And just some of the sessions where we do, or any of us, we just give that simple bit of information about, well, this is the difference between mental health and a mental illness. And people go, oh, I never knew that. And it's just until we start educating on these little tiny things, and we start saying, you don't need to be a doctor to know this. Guess what? You don't. You can know this. You can teach kids this. This will change the way they live their lives. People are like, oh. And it's that moment of just helping people to understand we've all got mental health. Every single one of us, everyone in this room, everyone watching this, everyone, your mum, your gran, it doesn't matter. Everyone. And they'll have it to the day they die. And only when you start to understand what mental health is can we live in a world where we expect to be able to make a difference or to change the stigma that goes with it, because it's absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. There is nothing else in the planet that exists that affects everybody, and we don't talk about it.
Wasn't one of you saying earlier, we talk about something every day and we don't talk about mental health every day? I can't remember what the physical equivalent was.
Well, I often say that we've got physical health. We understand this. We understand this physical thing. And if you've got a cold, and this is one of the other interesting things. We understand our bodies over years. We've come to understand when we've got aches and pains, or we've got a cold come in, and we go, oh, there's a signal. And what we don't realise, because we all have mental health, there is no health without the two. That our body gives us really clear signals for our mental health. So if I'm getting a cold, I'll be like, oh, I've got a cold come in. I'm straight down the shop, cold and flu, wrap up. I can't stop the cold, it's coming, but I've learnt that it's on its way. But when you educate people and say, well, your body does exactly the same. So your body, when you're stressed, will do something very unique. Your stress signature will come out. When you're stressed, you do the same thing every time, give or take. So I shout. When I get stressed, I shout. Hard to believe, right?
I know.
Is it continuous shouting?
But then it's when you help people understand this. So like we're all there. So if I'm in traffic and I'm late and I'm getting stressed, I'll shout. If I'm feeling anxious, and we all experience anxiety daily, it's a human bodily response, but when I feel anxious, my body will give me signs. So if I'm really anxious, I'll wake in the middle of the night, or I'll have really vivid dreams. Or the one that's always kind of took me years to work out is I become really needy. I seek assurance. So I'll then start to actively say, well, was that okay? Everything all right? Everything okay? And I've learned over years that when I feel anxious, in the same way I recognise when I'm getting a cold, my body's giving me really clear signals as to how my mental health is. Same with if I'm moving into a depressive state. And it's so important for people to be educated on the mental health aspect as well as the physical health, to help understand what our body's telling us, how it's behaving, because we just walk around in this vacuum of, it's just...
And are you ready for this? I'm gonna pull it back to we. So the whole thing was, one of the... Hold on guys, this is good. So one of the insights was that 1 in 4 people will have a mental health dip or ebb.
Yep.
And I was always thinking, what about the other 3? And if we can make sure that we're able to kind of understand when we're starting to require some, I was going to say self-love, but concentration on our own mental well-being, empowering those other 3 people to spot it and be able to tap you on the shoulder or maybe impart that education, suddenly then it stops these people being isolated and becomes that element. And very much when I was thinking about this envisionment of Stormzy or whoever on stage at Glastonbury talking about here's what you can do to look after yourself, but also here's what you can look after your friends, suddenly everyone's going to be in a position, because we're not looking for a vaccination or a cure. The frustrating thing is that there's loads and loads of ways for us to manage and improve our mental health. But if people don't know it,
Exactly.
it's just...
And I think with me was that my mental health, I was suffering from my mental health and I didn't know how to deal with it. But I almost accidentally stumbled upon the fact that if my physical health improves, then my mental health is going to improve. Yeah. And that's kind of where we were talking about, is that for me it was about breaking things down, making them manageable. So as a runner, I was like, oh right, I can run 3 miles. Next week the plan is to run 5 miles. And I noticed that I was suddenly giving myself little tasks to do. And it's only with hindsight now that I realise I was making myself better by doing these little things, just running a little bit further now and again. I was changing the way I was eating. I was changing my sleeping habits because my goals became important. I was like, I need to go to bed early tonight because I want to run 10 miles tomorrow. And it was only maybe 6 or 7 months down the line that I'd done a lot of running. I felt really good physically. I felt better. And I just thought, my word, I feel younger. I feel like I've fixed the problems without even knowing they were there in the first place. And so it's something you can control. And if I'd known Ian before, I would have been able to pick up on the triggers before I started running, so I could have saved money on trainers.
So there's that intrinsic link between physical health and mental health. We've got 2 words, but it's the same thing wrapped up together, isn't it?
Yeah, and I find it fascinating that in the running world, people will download a fitness app which will tell you your fitness, tell you what your body is at. But there's nothing for that with mental health, and people are so reliant on, I need to do this today because my fitness is dropping. But it's like, hang on a minute, how about if you arm yourself with the knowledge to do that mentally as well? It'd be a much more pleasant experience as well. You won't have to go running in the rain. You could just sit there with a book of poetry or something and just relax, and you might feel better about it. So.
And I remember you, Jimmy, saying earlier that you were, when you started to feel unwell, you were on Google trying to find out what is this, and you didn't know the words to put.
Oh, that was Ian.
That was
Ian. Yeah. That was Ian. I haven't got Google in Wales. just talk to a neighbour.
Yeah, it was exactly that. I was a 29, 30-year-old man who had literally never even probably said the words mental health. They didn't exist. I didn't have a clue about them. There'd never been anything that had occurred. And as I slowly deteriorated, and I use that word very clearly, I did deteriorate. It got to the point something happened on a plane. I erupted. I broke down on a plane. And
traffic jam on a plane.
Yeah, literally. There's no shouting, but I broke down on the plane, and the woman I was with, she didn't have a clue. What do you say? And it was that point that I thought I need to talk to someone. But again, as a man at that time, who had never spoken about mental health, I didn't know who any of the organisations were. And I remember sitting at home Googling words I couldn't. What do you Google what you don't know? And as I was Googling, I'm typing all kinds of things. You know, why did I break down on a plane? Well, do you not like flying? Nope, that's not it. And I'm struggling. It sounds silly, but I'm literally trying to find these words 8 years ago. And what would come back would be really clinical and really scary, and white papers 700 pages long with. And I just looked at it and thought, not interested.
And I think one of the other stigmas is the kind of opportunity to go and speak to counselling and those kind of elements. And I kind of use counselling now as almost, if I start to have a trigger, I'll go and, you know, unpack the dishwasher and re-put it back, whatever way you want to kind of look at it. But that kind of stigma of someone going, oh, you go to counselling, like we said before, like you pull a hammy or I get a cold, you wouldn't stop thinking about going to a physio or to a doctor. Yeah. But the thought of going, okay, well, I'm having some kind of deterioration or I'm starting to see a slight crack, or I don't want to use these perpetuating obvious words, but going and seeing someone who can help you is obvious. Like if I burst my tire in my car, I'm not going to it'll be all right. Yeah. you go down quick fit. Yeah. And it's just like, and I know I'll stop talking in a moment, but one of the things about we is really important to us, and it's very much about our peer group and our age group and musicians and stuff, but something we always talk about, and I'm sure you do as a parent. I really wanted to like change by 5% my life, but my God, I want my kids to literally go, I nearly swore there. Yeah. What are you on about, Dad? Like you don't go to counselling. What are you on about? You don't think about breathing. You get the right amount of sleep. That's the kind of future that we want to make sure is coming. And a big passion for us is trying to get down those age groups. Because if someone had spoke to us when we were 19, we wouldn't have gone on this. We wouldn't have drove that car with a flat tire for so long.
Especially with, and we might touch on this work we do with suicide, but I always say, imagine teaching your kids, when your kids ask you a question about something in life, and you just go, well, actually, if you don't want that to happen, just don't talk about it. They'd be like, what are you on about? Yeah, if you don't want it to happen, just don't mention it. They'd think you are absolutely berserk. What do you mean you don't talk about it? But that's what we do. We are literally in a society where, because we don't know what to say, because we don't know how to say it, because we're worried we're going to say the wrong thing or we're going to offend someone, or that we might come across as ignorant, we think, well, I just won't say anything.
So you're all on a mission to up the conversation, aren't you? To keep the conversation, to just get that conversation out there.
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it's fundamental.
In a fun way though, and a wild way.
Yeah.
You know, I'm really keen on getting people to be themselves and really express themselves, because I find that when you do that, you give yourself power. Do you know what I mean? You give yourself confidence, and for me that's a big thing. Is, you know, you can do this. You know, you can do it, and I'm all about like positivity online. I don't do like a bad running. I don't review music I don't like. It's all about positivity and
So now I'm finding it really hard to bring up the subject of suicide, because that doesn't feel very positive. But I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah, do it. Yeah.
I know that you were saying, John, when your friend Matt killed himself, you were really distressed, and you couldn't see the signs. You kind of kicking yourself, like, why did we not spot it?
Yeah.
And that's what's got you focused on all the people around the person and sort of educating everybody and keeping the suicide conversation current.
Yeah, and I think I said to you, I remember it, hours after it happened, having a conversation with a friend, and I was going, wait, was he in debt? Had he cheated on his girlfriend? You know, was he in trouble? Was he? Because I didn't have the education to understand that someone doing that doesn't have to have an external, like, Hollywood reason. It can be for a multitude of reasons which I wasn't educated on. And when I started to understand that, and it helped me heal and understand it, you then start to go, well, I wish I could tell more people, because then you're in a position where not only is it going to help people, I guess, overcome loss, but it might maybe avoid it. And, you know, you do look back and you do feel like a bit of a Neanderthal about how you had those opinions, and even the lazy language of, you know, committing and all those kind of things. And when you correct people, they kind of go, ugh, and you think, no, you have to make those changes and we have to understand it. And it's scary word to say sometimes, but unless we do say it, unless we talk about it, it's just going to sit in that little box, and we're going to continue to have situations that potentially could have been avoided.
Yeah, totally. There's 67.5 million people in the UK, give or take 1 or 2. 2018, 6,507 reported suicides. So that's where a coroner has actually been able to prove a suicide. Police records would sit around 10,000 a year, just in the UK. To give you an idea of that, same year there were 1,172 road traffic deaths. They're the numbers. There are no occupations where you're automatically trained in suicide prevention. None. Police officers, no. Paramedics, no. Ambulance, no. There aren't. And that is part of the reason why the number is as high as it is, because there aren't people educated around facts around suicide. There aren't people who feel comfortable enough to ask the question if someone's going to kill themselves, because we still believe that if I ask John if he's going to kill himself, then I'm putting the idea in his head. John, there's a new Ferrari, you should go and buy it. He's not going to go and buy it. I don't have that power over John. But we live in a world where we believe that we hold this power, that if we say the word, I'm going to put it in his head. Stats will tell us all day long that actually if you intervene and talk to someone, stats heavily tell you that you're more likely to save that person's life. Not make it worse, not make the situation, provoke the situation. You will probably save that person's life just by stepping in, just by saying, is everything all right? Because it breaks the process. And I think we were talking earlier about one of my absolute, passions is to to sit on Lorraine, and people that know me have told this, or any GMTV program, and just say, look, we've got this wrong, because we always hear people saying, I never saw it coming, we didn't see the signs, and actually that's our biggest failing as a nation, because an individual will tend to plan their suicide over a period of months, probably years. And the way I describe this, and if I will, I'll mention it again, is if you were to organise a party tomorrow night, can you do a 60th party? You'd say, yeah, no. I need to know who's going, what we're going to wear, is there food, is there a buffet, is it cooked food, is there drinks, is there a bar? There's all these elements that you need to put in place. You couldn't just do it at the drop of the hat. And this planning process applies to suicide. It needs to be planned, it needs to be thought out, it needs to be understood. If I could be macabre for a while, especially if you want a certain person to find you, because you need that plan to come through. You can't risk it going elsewhere. That takes a lot of planning. So all of this is going on behind the scenes, and what that means is often when someone's planning their suicide, they're running undercover, so to speak. So it's a gradual process, hence why people often say we never saw it coming, because it's a gradual process. But then much like organising your party, well, the point at which you've organised everything and you're at the venue and you're stood by the bar and people are coming in and everyone's smiling and the DJ's playing and everything's okay, and you have that first sip of water, you go, because everything's come to the point it has to. And this is what happens with suicide more often than not. When someone has planned for so long, and what we know is 85% of people who attempt suicide have an underlying mental illness or at least period of extended poor mental health. Whilst you're having all this planning process going on and you've eventually got to the point where all your plan is in place, the exact same thing happens. You go, and you start to see people and you start to be the life and soul of the party. You pay back debts, you make sure things are in order, you buy gifts, you go on holiday, you do all of these things. And because people are so, well, we're people, we like to see people okay. Of course we do. No one's horrible. We like to see people okay. And when we see that change in a person's behaviour, Johnny's all right again. I was worried about you. And we see that short-term fix. What that means is we often miss the whole process. And I don't understand why we can't just educate the population on this. Why we still have to be sat watching programmes. Matt passed away 2014. We've watched other programmes. We watched a brilliant programme on BBC that was really well put together by Roman Kemp a couple of weeks ago, and I promise you right now we'll be watching one in another 6 years' time, because nothing will be done.
So you're
sorry.
No, it was very good. So your big message is, I call it tidy up time as a clinician when I see somebody starting to tidy up.
Yeah.
And that's the moment that I think as a clinician is the most dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get back in there quickly.
We meet our needs, and this is the same with mental health. As human beings, and we are lovely people, most of us, we want people okay, but we meet our needs all the time, because it's easier for us to ask, are you okay? And you go, yeah, and we go, whew, I asked. I've met my need there. In the same when we go to anything about mental health, you're right, we say we're fine 14 times a day on average. It means nothing. But because we're meeting our needs, we're missing everything. And it's only when you spot tidy up time or that sudden unexplained recovery or this change in someone and you actually meet their needs and go, look, I'm concerned. I've seen some things and this, I don't mean to offend you, but are you going to kill yourself? Are you thinking about killing yourself? When you do that, you literally hand over a gold-plated permission slip saying, I really want to know what you've got to say. I'm not asking if you're okay. I'm not asking you not to do anything stupid. I want to know what's going on. And you would be amazed how many people, when given that permission, will go, and this is stuff that we can educate for free. Like John said at the start, we don't need a cure, we don't need a pill, we don't need something that we've got to inject in everyone. This is something that we can be doing in schools for free.
And I guess one of our passions is the fact that, you know, the kind of need for a fire warden, a first aider in your office, all this stuff, like God forbid would you go into a bar that didn't have a bouncer on the front door. Yeah. But is it built into our planning to always have a mental health first aider in that circulation, or at least put people through that training? And we're seeing something really evident in the football world at the moment where people are going, oh my gosh, we should all make sure we do CPR and first aid. Obviously you should, but let's not forget about, and our mission statement is to try and break to be the kind of non-profit that makes mental health and physical health as important as each other.
And one of our audience members has asked a question, which is, do you think, what's your perspective on getting more mental health professionals, they're saying there, into the corporate world? What do you think?
Well, I mean, you could be really commercial and you're much better at the statistics, but if you were to invest in mental health first aid, you make it back tenfold by people being off work, God forbid the real extremities, but it's ridiculous that if you don't have the opportunity to get someone to be on that course in that group and then train the trainer through your workplace, it's just, I mean, it's a few £100, but it's so important.
Well, that was, so Deloitte did research 2019, now I've lost a whole year through COVID, but Deloitte did research 2019 that said for every pound a company spends on mental health awareness will recoup £5 back, and that would be through loss of absenteeism, loss of presenteeism, which costs 3 times the amount of absenteeism. Bosses still believe if someone's sat at their desk they're earning money. Well, they're actually costing you 3 times the amount if they shouldn't be there. And then of course staff turnover. But also on that question, because I came from a corporate background and I spoke to my work, and again, let's really drive home. People aren't horrible, but people are limited by a lack of knowledge.
Yes.
I was offered 2 weeks off and I gladly took 2 weeks off, and I came back after 2 weeks and went, you all right? I went, well, we gave you 2 weeks off, what have you been doing with it? And this is the understanding that more organisations need to understand, that mental health isn't about fixing. It's about recovery. It's about how do we support you, because you don't have a mental illness, go and take some time off and then be fixed. This is something that is with you for life. It is recovery. How do you crisis plan? How do you make sure you're aware of what's going on? How do you get others around you to support you and to understand? There's so many bigger parameters that, again, are just verbal training that can help. So.
And it's the age-old thing, prevention is better than cure.
Oh.
We're being very sort of after fact here. But actually, like we said at the beginning, mental health's great. So if you do go and talk about mental health in the workplace, it's not about, oh, if this happens, it's here are the things to do to improve it. Work together, make sure you put down your phones, have some time together, take time to listen to music, and all these, it's just like, oh, obviously, but it's lost somewhere along the lines.
Definitely.
So we've got some more questions coming in. We're going to involve the audience here.
Yeah, definitely.
So what would your advice be on signposting self-journey? I'm not quite sure exactly what I'd make of that, but how did you identify your triggers that help you safeguard yourself now? So I know we've had a bit of conversation about that, but so you know when you're shouting.
So does my wife and my kids.
What about you guys?
Mine was trial and error, I think, or learning from my mistakes. I still don't really know what they are. I still know, something's not right here, and it still usually takes a good run or something like that to figure it out. Sorry to talk about running all the time, but yeah, I still don't really know what mine are. I know that alcohol was a massive, just led to all sorts of chaos. So cutting out the chaos is a good one. I think of myself sometimes as, you know, those gas containers with gas bouncing around. alcohol just made me like that. So there was like loads of pressure, and it's just like, take that out of the equation.
Yeah.
You can just think about things a little bit better. So I'm still learning. Ian's helped me out a lot with that, with the podcast, and yeah, so.
You do therapy, right? Or counselling, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, I mean, obviously that's an important part of me understanding, and I said dishwasher. I think it's more when the spoons are in the wrong bit, I need to kind of get them back together, and sometimes that conversation helps it. But I think what really has helped me is cutting out, I won't say it, cutting out the BS with my wife. So my wife will go, you need to go for a walk, or maybe go and see Eleanor, or do those things. But also, as I opened up to my friendship group, recently, you know, something happened which kind of brought up some external kind of past experiences, and my friends reached out and went, dude, are you all right? You know, just checking in. And I think what's helped me is, although I might not have, I've become better at spotting it myself, because of my openness and because of my passion, it's also allowed my friends to kind of drop their guard, and my partner and my family to kind of go, wait, look, I don't feel as bad asking that question, because the more you ask that question, the less it is. And then sometimes you do need to get a scruff of the neck from my wife, and she'll go, sort it out. And I think that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't learnt about what needs to be done, and also had those conversations, because I'm sure there's plenty of relationships out there where people go, I maybe know what's going on, but I don't want to say it. And especially that's massively perpetuated in the work experience, work environment, I would imagine, or teams, or in bands.
I've mentioned what some of mine are, but what I would say is on the We Are Hummingbird website, and I know we'll talk about it later, we've got a workbook on there. And actually on the workbook, there's a whole page around anxiety, and what we list on there is the effects. So there's physical, emotional, and behavioural. And what I'd say to the person who asked that question is, have a look at it, look at those physical, emotional behaviours, and really think to yourself. And it won't happen overnight. You can't just do it, but you need to really look at them and think, what do I recognise in myself that I do? So, and when you know, because there's things that I do, and then really reflect on that. So the next time you're feeling anxious or you're feeling that way, think, okay, well, is my body telling me I'm feeling anxious? Because there will be really, really clear signals. And when you learn them, and it does take months, years to really hone in on them, knowledge is power. It really is. When you know what your body's trying to tell you, then you can reflect on it rather than just bumbling around like, I don't know why I feel this way, but I do. So yeah, I'd say go to the workbook definitely and have a look.
Cool. Jimmy, you've spotted a question that's aimed at you.
Yeah,
He's got distracted.
I saw my name in the corner of my eye. I was like, oh.
So it says, does Jimmy find music as an escape and a place where he can create his own world? So somebody's...
Wow. That's my dad, that is probably. What I find about music is it's like a cold pane of glass, and my thoughts are like water droplets, and they condense on it. It's like it gives my state of mind something to cling on to, and I can shape it. So quite often when I'm talking about music, when I'm running, I'll sometimes think, I'm talking about the same stuff all the time. I'm talking about the end of the world. I'm talking about like the sun exploding. What is going on? And I'm just realizing that the music is just giving me a way to frame or put a weight on what's going on in my head. So it does create the world, but then it also kind of just calms me down in a way. It just helps me make sense.
Your creativity's massive. Like when we do podcasts and when we chat or when you watch any of the videos, I think you go to a different world. I mean, you're in a different world as it is most of the time. You go so creative in your mind.
About whales.
Yeah, but you go so creative, and I don't know if you realise you do that. It's brilliant.
I definitely don't realise it. No, I don't. I kind of. I think I can be a really boring person, and that is one of the reasons why I drank a lot in the past, is that I'd be really anxious about going somewhere, and I think I've got nothing to say. Nobody wants to hear me talk about whatever's going to pop into my head, and for me that would tell me that I'm a boring person. It's strange. And that also ties in with why I couldn't identify that I was having mental health problems, because I thought it was all part of like a creative process. I thought you're meant to feel like this because you're just invested in a project at the moment, and maybe things are not going quite right with a song you're writing, so you just feel down. And I'm all over the shop, but music certainly, it just helps me define or get a feeling where I'm at the moment.
Should we just take 5 minutes to recognise what it's like to work in the music industry, given we're here at Tile Yard, and that's your golden thread, isn't it? So it's a really creative industry, but What? Or and?
It's horrendously competitive, is what we've talked about. You
Yeah.
talk about like running a race. Like in the music industry, it's perpetuated by the industry itself, but even down to like Battle of the Bands and people getting tours without it, it seems to have lost its lovely 60s, 70s vibe at times.
Yeah, I can compare it directly to running and music. Right? I can compare the two worlds. There's more jealousy in music than it is in running, which is weird. In running, if an athlete who you race against does well, you're happy for them. Well, generally, I would be. Music is the other way around. From my experiences, a band as well, and suddenly, oh, they must have done something to get that. And it can be a really kind of negative, and which is strange because you just want to be creative.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to think about not just the boys and girls that are on stage. The industry is supported by self-employed riggers and sound technicians and guitar techs and such. And, you know, them being in a position where they put their hand up and go, right, I'm not feeling well, and they miss a tour, they might not get on that next tour. And there's so much that's behind the scenes for a gig that has such high stakes levels, let alone now with what we've seen, unfortunately, with COVID.
Yeah.
You know, the kind of strain that's on that is unbelievable, let alone the fact you're stood on stage with something that you've opened your heart and written about, and if someone boos afterwards, and if you think back to the early days of when you're gigging and people are talking and stuff, you think, why the hell do I do this?
It's really key, isn't it? The amount of... So there's two things that always stand out for me and we are fortunate enough that we work with and support some amazing artists, some touring artists, from whether that be bands or DJs or acts. You know, we've got to really work with great people, and we'll continue to do so. And I guess a couple of the things that really stand out for me that I'd never paid much attention to was the amount of pressure that an artist is under to perform. And the way I describe this is, pick any job, a car salesman, whatever you want to be, and you go to work one day and you smash it for sales. I mean, you break the UK record for selling cars, and you're walking out and people are high-fiving you, and you got photo of the press there. You know, you're at the top of your game, and you walk out and it's like, wow. And you go home, you go for a celebrity meal, you have all this, and then the next morning you go into work and they're like, same again?
Yeah.
And this is what we don't think about because we don't live in that world, or most of us don't, but we expect so much from performers. So if you've released a song and it's done well in the charts, heaven forbid it's gone to #1, great, look at you, another one.
Yeah.
And the pressure that goes on that never gets discussed. The anxiety that comes with it, the isolation, the depression, boom. And of course they can't then say, well, hang on, I'm not in a good place here, because you've just had a #1, what you got to complain about? It never gets spoken.
And the education part is that, you know, mental health doesn't give a flying F how much you earn, what you do for a living. So just because you are, you know, headlining and doing those great things, or whether you are, you know, cleaning the streets, you have the same susceptibility. But for us to say, oh, well, they're on a pedestal, they own, and you can take that across genre, footballers, you know, every type of successful industry, everyone's got the same opportunity to unfortunately not be in a great place.
So it's a really tough industry to work in.
Yeah, we're seeing it a lot, and again the pressures of you know, you might have a young lad, a young girl who love making music. That's what they want to do, and if you're good at making music and that's your passion, there are loads of up and coming artists, and they'll spend hours at their laptop. You know, they really invest so much time into it, and they've sat there and they want to get better and better and better, and then you get that big break, and all of a sudden you're being put in front of, you know, record agencies and deals, and you're going on tour, and then you're getting Americans or other countries saying, come over here, fly over, we'll pay £60,000 or whatever it is, come over, fly here, 24 hours, in you come, you go in. Remember, you're just a young kid that wants to make music. You turn up, you met in with this big party lifestyle, wow, this is amazing. But you haven't just been booked always to play that part, you've been booked for 24 hours. You're a name, so you're going to party with the promoter, you're going to have a great time with the promoter, and then when they're done with you, they're going to push you on your airplane. You've got to try and grab a couple hours kit before you get to the next venue, and it all starts all over again. Remember, this is just a young kid that wants to make music. And then they can't say to the promoter, I don't want to do this, because what if the promoter doesn't book me again? What if I don't get paid again? This is such a big vicious circle. But looking in, well, they've got nothing to grumble about.
And,
the game.
And you'll often see great musicians or singers, when they break and they're suddenly touring, they'll get a vocal coach in and they'll start to look after their instrument. At no point is the industry coming in going, okay, well, let's talk to you about how to manage your mental health, how to manage your anxiety, how to basically level up in what you need to do because the stresses go up. And it's you know, it's in that industry, but it's right the way through to every industry that we have to empower people with that support.
So we could talk for hours and hours, couldn't we? Unfortunately, we've only got a few minutes left, so I'm going to do some quick fire questions for you guys.
Whoa.
Are you ready?
Yes, come on.
Okay.
Let me have a drink of water first.
So what we do, instead of paying people to come onto Healios Spotlight, is we donate what would have been a fee to charitable purposes. So we've chosen to donate the equivalent of a fee to We Are Hummingbird tonight. So
Lovely.
tell us
Thank
your
you.
vision for We Are Hummingbird. What is it for the future? What's the vision? You've got 60 seconds.
Go.
The vision is that we can help as many people as possible shorten the gap to finding support. And whether that's support with existing people, whether it's Samaritans or the NHS or Calm or Mind, all these amazing people, or whether it's downloading a book, or whether it's going to their boss and saying, I think we should have a mental health first aid training in our workplace, we want to kind of give people as many opportunities to do that. And we want to do that for people that might have their own struggle, but equally as important, give people the tools to understand and spot other people that they might be able to help. And if we can do that under the banner of music, happy days.
Yeah.
So that hummingbird close to the nectar.
Ah, yes.
So the money that you've kind of just said, that will buy musical instruments.
Fantastic.
So we open up for allowing people to apply for grants. So organisations, schools that can't afford instruments, we'll buy them, and we'll say there you go, and maybe we'll get a little famous musician to go and present it as well. So keep your diary free.
They'd be disappointed.
And Jimmy, we've got some running punks in the audience this
Yes,
evening. So
I think
what's
so
your
too.
vision for the future?
I just want to run all over the world. Just want to keep on running. I don't know. Just keep on spreading the good vibes and just keep on learning from strangers. Like what music makes you happy? Let me have some of that. That's what I'm all about. I'm just like a big running sponge. I just want to feed off the community, and I want the community to get bigger, basically. And I love seeing people encourage people to take that first step. That's what it's all about, is getting out that door and taking that first step on your running journey. So just to inspire as many runners and future runners as possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've both got websites. You've got a podcast that goes out every Friday. Is that right?
Monday.
Monday.
Playlist goes out every Friday.
Playlist goes out every Friday.
Yeah.
Podcast every Monday.
Podcast every Monday. And in the last few minutes, thinking about those tracks that you put out on the playlist. Last 3 questions, one each, and you can all go at the same time if you want to, but what's your favourite track today?
Woo! It's a big one. House of the Rising Sun by the Animals.
Oh, nice. Go, John.
You asked me this question about an hour and a half ago and I'm still struggling. I would have to say Talk Tonight by Noel Gallagher, because it was the thing, it was the song that made me want to pick up a guitar, and that guitar has given me endless moments of joy.
Nice. Shed 7, Chasing Rainbows.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. It's
Thank
been
you.
huge fun to talk to you, great energy, and I'm sure our audience will be connecting with you outside of this evening.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.